Hi there, good morning. My name is Anna Bolin, and I'm a senior researcher at the International Institute for Environment and Development. We're a partner of the Forest and Farm Facility, so working with Agricord, IUCN, and FAO, amongst many of the producer organizations who are represented here today. So let me just share my screen. So this COVID-19 pandemic, as we heard yesterday from this very interesting survey, is exposing some fundamental problems and vulnerabilities within our economies and societies today. And many of these are overlapping with ongoing challenges and risks, such as climate change, poverty, inequality. What this is showing also is a fundamental lack of resilience across the board. In many countries, we are seeing lockdowns being put in place, but without there being adequate welfare systems or safety nets in place to help people to deal with the impacts on their livelihoods from these lockdowns. And so what we are also seeing then is an incredible effort and important impact of the work of producer organizations. These organizations are managing to reach rural areas, provide services and support in the absence of other safety nets and services from government, amongst other actors. And these organizations do this on a daily basis in most cases. They can draw on a diversity of social and cultural resources in order to help their members in local communities build resilience. And so in this presentation, we will look at some of the examples of these producer organizations, what type of social and cultural services that they provide to members in order to help them deal with various risks at different parts in their life, but also to maintain and provide well-being. So there's a need to go beyond just economic coping strategies and capabilities to also look at these very important social and cultural services. So what do we mean by social and cultural services? Social services, well, to start with, these are services that are already provided, as I mentioned, in many cases, but they're also often part of traditional service provision within cultures. So in the Andean region, we have, for example, the Minca system, which is basically collective solidarity, where in communities you work together to build community assets or maintain infrastructure and work together during harvesting times and so on. And so this is often an extension of existing systems that are in place and that can be scaled up or formalized through producer organizations. So to give some examples, so social services, many of us know of social finances. So for example, we have rural savings and loan associations that fill a really critical role to the millions of farmers, rural households who lack access to other forms of finance. But we also have essential education, vocational training, care services, healthcare, childcare, elder care. Many of these type of roles and functions that are traditionally provided in many societies by women, but that can also be provided by producer organizations in order to support their female members to participate more actively in the organization's business. Social protection is another important area. So many producer organizations do provide food aid or food for work or maternity leave and pensions at different times of the life cycle when you might need it. Cultural services. So cultural services is often associated with 1 out of 4 different types of ecosystem services. But here we like to focus more on the actions and the human agency behind cultural services. So the actions now, but also in the past, but also the biological knowledge that people apply to protect, to restore, and improve the quality and quantity of ecosystem services, but also of indigenous food systems, of traditions. Well, also as Jeff Campbell, who is in this meeting, he used to refer to it as fun. People also need fun and to have these ceremonies and traditions in place. And so producer organizations also do provide various types of services in this area. So here we have a picture from the Ecuadorian Amazon. So families working in the chakra farm, a traditional production system, which is super important for local food security, income security, but also to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So various types of educational services, ceremonial services, services that help to protect and maintain these type of landscapes can be included in cultural services. So how do producer organizations use these different resources in order to build resilience in members? So this was a question that we wanted to look at during the second phase of the Forest and Farm Facility, which started in 2018. And so we had a look at some specific examples, and we have more to share now as well. So starting with the Philippines, we have the People's Alliance for Progress Multipurpose Cooperative, PAP-MPC. And then we have the Kasena Nankana Baobab Cooperative Union, Kambauko, from Ghana. So these are two different producer organizations that are really interesting because of their ability to really raise capital internally and invest that in vital infrastructure, social finance, and care services for their members. So PAP-MPC, it's a coffee cooperative, mainly have female members, so 85% are women, and then they have 60% of the leadership are also women. And they started off a decade ago because they wanted to provide fresh water supply to their villages. So each family member contributed $20 into a joint investment fund to develop this freshwater system. They found at the end of that that they had $400 left over, and so they decided to invest in starting a coffee cooperative. This went very well, and a decade later, they are connected to an international network of women in coffee and sell both domestically and internationally. And what they do is that they use some of the profits from the business to reinvest into the freshwater supply system that they have established, but also to maintain community roads, so infrastructure to make sure that goods can get to the market, but also in care services, so childcare for the members' children. Most of the members are women and they have care responsibilities, and in order to juggle this different balance, work and family life, they help them with childcare. Then we have Kambaoko from Ghana. So yesterday we had one of our breakout groups. We discussed the importance of village savings and loans associations in Ghana. So Kambaoko is also a very good example of this. So this is a baobab and shea nuts cooperative union whose members are also predominantly women. It consists of 42 registered cooperative societies, and they manage 173 group enterprises. So roughly they have 13,000 members. And so what Kamboko does is that it's come up with a very sophisticated system for raising capital internally. So through membership fees, shareholdings, levies on the product sales, and mandatory village savings and loans associations at the local level, they are able to raise capital that can be used on the one hand to provide soft loans to members. So during particular times when you have a family emergency such as ill health or bereavement in the family, or when you need to send your kids to school and you don't have enough money in the bank. So these soft loans help members to be able to pay for these things without having to go to the much more expensive and prohibitive even market of conventional loans. They also use these finances to provide working capital so that the business can continue to run smoothly and be viable, access working capital, which is so difficult otherwise if you don't have any other access to finance. But also to invest in different types of care services for children and for elder care, again, to help the predominant membership, which are women, to be able to participate actively in the business. So these are some of the examples of two different women-led producer organizations who really have managed to balance these different social needs that members have together with the business needs to access markets and be able to turn around on a daily basis. Then we also have a very good example from Kenya and from Ghana, which I thought I could share with you. So one of the producer organizations who is partnering with FFF in Kenya, the Farm Forestry Smallholder Producers Association of Kenya, FFSPAC, a couple of years ago went through a gender assessment working together with an organization called Grassroots Organizations Operating Together in Sisterhood Roots, Kenya. Basically, they were trying to assess how to address the weak participation of women in their organization. What they found was that most of their members, the household had the household head as registered member, which was a man, which meant that they were the ones who were mainly represented in leadership positions and important aspects of the business, whereas the women who were also actually the main workers on the farms maintained this quite lower level position within the organization as laborers in the farm, but with low level of participation and leadership and higher level decision-making positions. And so what they started to look at was collaborating with this grassroots organization Roots in how to install women's business coaching and mentoring at the local level to make sure that women would have the same opportunities to gain access to training and to learn from other women who have perhaps experienced similar challenges as they have in getting a greater say in business life and economic matters in the home, but also within the producer organization. And this has been very successful, running for a couple of years, and trains women on a yearly basis in tree nursery business, timber business, and different forms of savings techniques. Similar to this, we have the recently established Ghana Federation of Forest and Farm Producers, GAFAP in Ghana. Fantastic initiative of a number of producer organizations coming together, getting organized at a national level to, on the one hand, strengthen the members' capacities in various areas, but also to engage in policy effectively. And so what GAFAP is now installing is a similar approach to have internal sourcing of women business coaches and mentors who can ensure that these different capacity building efforts and opportunities are maintained within the organizations and can lead to scaling up capacities and capabilities in the long term. And so what this is doing is helping to address some of these long-term typical deep, difficult vulnerabilities that women face within producer organizations in ensuring that they're getting business coaching and mentoring from other women, but also to have men seeing women in that prominent position and taking the role as a business leader and mentor to help to challenge some of these perceptions of the different roles between women and men. Finally, another interesting example of a cultural service that is being provided in Ecuador, one example, is the collective marketing of products with high biocultural value. So this is high value to biodiversity systems, but also to the cultural heritage of these local populations. So here we have Maria from Sachalaran, and she is in one of these chakra farms. So about 14,000 families are engaging in these different type of agroforestry systems called the chakras. And up to 80 different plant species are grown in these systems, and they provide food security, income security, climate change adaptation mitigation, but also a way to maintain this traditional knowledge and culture that they have within these systems. So women also play a very key role here. They're often the main communicators of this traditional knowledge, and they educate youth and members of the community through different rituals and other means to help maintain this knowledge. And so 60 producer organizations in Napo province are currently collaborating together with the provincial government of Napo in order to create this label that we see here, Chakra Amazonica. And in combination with a participatory guarantee system. So you have these two aspects that are strategies to try to increase the visibility of the importance of these traditional systems, but also of the role of women in working in these farms and as a key role in the value chains of the many different products that come from these farming systems. So this was launched late last year, and it's a great initiative to follow in the coming months. So what does it then mean in terms of how do you operationalize these different services? What are the practical considerations that needs to be taken into account? So here on the picture, we have a village meeting. It's a social enterprise in Indonesia who works with these, it's nanny house in Flores, Indonesia, and he, the leader here, he works with many women's collective weaver groups. And basically what they're looking at is how do we design a financial mechanism that suits us and that suits our specific context. And so this is a participatory engagement in how to design a specific service that meets these different women's needs. So our first step, put in place this type of internal processes for identifying what the needs are and how do you then deliver services according to this. That could be a meeting, it could be a survey, many different approaches exist. So the questions that needs to be asked is, on the one hand, how do we deliver these different services? Should it be within an existing structure or current service package that we have and offering our members? Or does it need to be separated out as a specific, perhaps another cooperative that needs to provide it? This is often the case when it comes to healthcare services, for example. Cooperatives that are mainly providing marketing or production functions may not feel that it is in their place, or that it will be too difficult for them to provide, say, care services, whether it is healthcare or childcare or elder care, whatever it might be. Same thing for financial services. So there's a difference and a question there as to what type of structure should be delivering these services. Should it be perhaps best in collaboration with another actor, someone who might be in the private sector or in the public sector? Often, again, within care services, you see a lot of collaboration with public sector actors and different forms of producer organizations in, on the one hand, staffing and also financing these type of services. Finally, what could be the way of financing such services? These are not directly related to the production or economic outputs of the organization. And so it may be difficult sometimes to justify drawing from hard-earned revenue in order to make those investments. But there are different ways of doing it. So it could be a strategy to ask members to pay a fee for a service, or if that's not possible, because of depending on what type of membership you have, you may indirectly be able to finance them through membership or levies on products or sales, as we saw in Ghana, the Kambauko example. Or if you're working in collaboration with the public sector actor or private sector actor, you might be able to raise funds through grants or through co-funding. So many different options exist. The most common option is to have a very mixed strategy to finance these type of services. And in many cases, indirect financing through various strategies to raise capital internally is very common. So what are some of the challenges that we've been able to observe in delivering these type of services? Well, on the first one, which is often a barrier to delivering high quality and regular services in rural areas, is how expensive it is. So that is definitely a key barrier. And this is related to also, how do you justify drawing on hard-earned income? You would need to, on the one hand, distribute some, obviously, profits back to your members, but can you then also set aside some in order to be able to pay for such services? Often, once you reach a certain scale, it is much easier because you're able to have a certain volume of produce, but also volume of membership in which to draw from in order to raise capital for such services. Finally, staff skills can be another barrier, because this could be a complete new sector than what you're used to, and that could be difficult to also find people with the right skills. And then the limited participation of women and other vulnerable groups. If you're looking to, for example, make sure that you can design and provide services for more vulnerable groups within the community, then they need to also be a part of this identification process. And if there are already limited participation of these groups, that could be a challenge. But there are also obviously great opportunities and benefits with having this diverse set of services. So it offers way to diversify and strengthen the organization by meeting the various needs of members through the enterprise. The fact that the producer organization generates the revenue that it does is a fantastic opportunity to allow for this. It can also help tackle deep and often difficult to address inequalities, for example, gender inequalities within the organization, by ensuring that women have the support that they need to both participate actively in the organization, as well as providing some of the household and family responsibilities that they have. It can also be an opportunity to have identify new partnerships and learning from working with other public sector and private sector agencies. Finally, this could be an opportunity to engage constructively in a dialogue with governments, and as we discussed yesterday, also to hold them accountable on certain aspects. For example, access to services, but also rights. So when we talk about social services or public services, these are very much in the domain of the government. And so should producer organizations have a seat at a table at Sustainable Development Goal working groups and processes at a national level? Absolutely, and many do. But should they also have a seat at a table at the COVID-19 response discussions, for example? So many of these different questions are extremely relevant right now. So what lessons do we have for scaling up resilience? Here we have an excellent example that the Forest and Farm Facility has been learning from many times. And I'm sure we might even have somebody from the Self-Employed Women's Association of India here today, but I thought it'd be good to bring it up. SEVA is basically the largest informal sector women's union in the world. Based in India, it has roughly 2 million members, I believe, or just under, and it represents 125 different trades. So here is a highly diverse organization. It provides around 19 different services to its members that are all designed in order to meet this integrated approach that SEVA have built on these 4 different key areas. So capacity building, capital formation, social security, and organizing. And so these 4 areas feeds into SEVA's mission of providing work security, income security, food security, and social security to have full employment and self-reliance of their members. And so this is an integrated approach where the capacity building efforts are really advanced and super high quality in order to make sure that their members stay competitive in the market, that their businesses are viable and allow for the capital formation that is needed through enterprise, but also through different forms of financial services. So SEVA Bank provides services to members in terms of savings and loans, of course, but also other forms that provides social security, so insurance and other forms of investments that are made into healthcare, housing, childcare, and so on. And finally, this collective scale also allows SEVA to have a seat at a table at many, many different policy discussions. So to sum up, SEVA is an excellent example. It's an organization that's existed for 40 years and has an extremely high number of members. So it's an inspiration to many. But we can also draw many important lessons from these other producer organizations that we looked at today. So, for example, these diversified agroforestry systems are really crucial for underpinning short, medium, and long-term resilience. And so coming up with different ways of promoting and protecting these systems, whether it is through policy, collective marketing efforts, and so on, are crucial for contributing to resilience. These really innovative different strategies to raise capital internally and investing it wisely is really important for spreading and mitigating risk of members, in particular during emergency times when there is a risk of falling into deprivation without such assistance. Now is a very particular important time for this. Finally, collaboration and networking. We've seen examples of really strong producer organizations collaborating with women's organizations, business networks, alliances, and government agencies. A really strong, broad spectrum of actors who really need to be involved in order to build collective resilience in rural areas. Finally, so we've been trying to document these different case studies to allow for learning for a couple of years. So for those who are interested, please do visit the Forest and Farm Facility website, as well as IIED's website, where you will find more information on the SEVA business incubation case study, or from access to finance in rural areas, or on how forest and farm producer organizations provides these different social and cultural services, and in particular how this also can help to support women's empowerment efforts and their participation in producer organizations. Thank you all for your interest today, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.